and welcome to EdTech Mondays Africa. My name is Joy Doreen Bira, and it's so good to be back in Kigali, Rwanda, the land of 1,000 hills, where the Young Africa Work Summit, hosted by the Mastercard Foundation, has brought together young people, leaders, educators, employers, policymakers, and partners from across the continent. This special edition is asking a very practical question: how are digital skills shaping the future of work for young Africans, not just as a training for certification, but as a pathway to opportunity, entrepreneurship, and dignified and fulfilling work? Across Africa, millions of young people are learning new skills and preparing for a fast-changing world of work. But the bigger challenge is what happens next. And to set the context for us, we are joined by Daniel Halo, who is the Executive Director of Programs, Impact, Evidence, and Learning at the Mastercard Foundation. We've hosted the summit. Why now?
So first of all, it is our 20th anniversary. So we are celebrating 20 years of program implementation, and we are also 7 years into implementation of the Young Africa Work Strategy. And we have collected a lot of learnings over the last 7 years. And we thought this would be an opportune time for us to come together and reflect with our partners, with our stakeholders on the progress that we have made and what else we need to do to get to goal as well.
And what are we learning, from the implementation of the Young Africa Work Strategy?
Have learned a lot, again, thanks to our partners that are working with us. And I'll start with the young people, because that's what the work is centered on. It's very obvious to us from all the programs that are in implementation that the young people are moving, they're doing. They're not waiting for us or anybody else. We've seen many examples of where young people are actually working and earning income from multiple streams. So this demonstrates their resilience and their ability to do for themselves. And I start with that because it's important that we center the work in a way that is enabling them, and enabling them in a way that not just gives them an opportunity today, but the future as well. Which leads me to the second learning I'd focus on, and there's many. Intentionality is central. When you design programs, you've got to have a person in mind. It cannot be generic. Young women, persons with disabilities, persons from refugee communities, all of this needs particular attention in the way the design of a program takes place, and how implementation also happens on the ground. And ultimately, this is where the impact can either take place or we fall short of our goals.
And so digital skills are also a big part of enabling young people. But what does dignified and fulfilling work really look like in the digital economy?
I'll take a step back and I'll just first anchor. What do we mean by dignified and fulfilling work? And again, we were informed by young people on how we think about this, not something that we as a foundation derived from a desktop study or from a workshop. And young people told us in so many words that they care about income, and it has to be reliable income in order for it to be what it needs to be for them in their lives. Respect in the workplace is important for young people. The work has to be reputable, so they can share with their families, the communities that they're around, proudly of what they do. And it has to give them a sense of purpose, that this is taking them somewhere, and it's not just an activity. So these are the markers we think about, and to be very specific, if a young person tells us that they have reliable income and they have one of these other markers, we consider that to be reaching the status of dignified, fulfilling work. Let me come back to your question on the digital reality as well, right? I wouldn't change any of these markers.
Right.
They're all relevant. However, when you think of a person who is working in a digital environment, so they're home, or they're at a desk, they're working, and so it may appear from the outside that, well, this person is sitting in a controlled environment, they're at an office, maybe they're working from home. So automatically you may assume, well, dignified, fulfilling work is a given, but not necessarily, right? And these three markers, I think, to me, are the key ones. If a person is doing this work, but it's not something that is giving them fulfillment, self-fulfillment, they're not proud of the work that they're doing. or they don't feel respected because of the environment that they're working in. And that to me is one of those things that really needs to be held tightly, that we allow the young person to determine whether or not they have reached that status.
And from enabling, young people to get into dignified and fulfilling work, where is the system still failing young people? And what teachers does the foundation recommend?
The first one we hear about continuously is on the ability for young people that are starting businesses or trying to run businesses to be able to access capital when they need it, at an affordable rate. Simply put, lack of access to affordable, flexible capital continues to come up. It's by no means a new challenge. It's been around. It's very entrenched. So we continue to see that as being one of the barriers that hasn't gone away. The lack of care facilities when it comes to either training facilities or work facilities is a big one. And it's, again, something that gets overlooked. Society really has not recognized it as a major barrier. But when we engage with young women, they tell us again and again that this is actually preventing them from taking steps forward.
And what's it going to take collectively, really, to enable more young people around the continent?
Yeah, this is where it's not for one entity to address this scale of challenge. We all know the numbers. The numbers are massive, and they're going to keep getting bigger. Government obviously has a role to play, and this is why the Mascot Foundation been very determined that our work should be aligned to national priorities. Now, that's going to then allow us to think about, if we're doing work that's aligned with national priorities, then there's a strong possibility that we can sustain the impact of what we do programmatically. Another part of it is working on challenges that are not directed at an individual, but at the systems. When I speak of systems, education systems, financial service systems, and addressing whether it's regulatory or policy challenges that are preventing us from really moving the needle materially for these roadblocks is another focus area for us as well. The foundation has worked with programs that are both focused at young people at an individual level and also at a systems level. I believe the stitch for me is when we do both at the right balance, and this is ultimately what I think gives us the level of scale of impact that we're looking for that starts to address the need.
From the stage to the corridors, from the young people to the policymakers, it was very clear what Africa must get right now. Let's take a look at the highlights.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Kigali. Welcome to the Young Africa Works Summit. There is a central question that anchors us. How do we collectively map the pathways to dignified and fulfilling work for young Africans, and how do we do that at scale?
Dignified and fulfilling work at scale. Helping young people, one by one, essential as that is, will never be enough. We have to take on the systems around them. Because young people can't entrepreneur their way out of structural barriers. And while they try, innovating out of systems that fail them is a tall order.
For Africa, the issue of youth is everything. Governments has a crucial role to play. So we need to have a proper policy prescription. Otherwise, the markets do not function and our young people cannot thrive in their businesses or any engagement they do.
The education system as is today is preparing young people for today's occasion. So by the time that we finish preparing the youth, things have already changed. I think we need to relook, we need to rethink our education system, analyze it to understand what is it supposed to do in order to prepare young people for the opportunities, not only for just the opportunities of today, but that of tomorrow as well.
Capital, money is there. The problem is that the money that is available is not designed for the people who are ready to absorb the money. So in Rwanda, we are already working very closely with the MasterCard Foundation. And one of the projects that we're actually doing is to be able to help people who are into the agriculture sector and also tourism sector.
It is very difficult for our young people also to navigate the opportunity structure. I don't think in most of our countries we are collating labor market intelligence to find out what the trends are, where the gaps are in terms of skill shortages. Because if we were to do that, then we would be in a better position to plan the education system to meet those needs.
What gives me the greatest hope after participating in the Young African Work Summit is the possibility that from here, things are going to be put in place that every youth will have that opportunity they need to grow in their business.
The youths are not lazy, the youths are not weak. What we need is tailored interventions because the reality of each businesses are different.
I'm hopeful that after the summit, we're able to all go out and create a better community for ourselves, create level playing field ground for ourselves, ensure that we don't go back, just follow the narrative that has been created for Africa, but shift the perception and the mindset about what should happen to us as Africans by us as Africans.
The summit convened many voices in one room, but at the heart of this conversation are young people themselves. So we wanted to hear directly from them what is working, what's missing, and what kind of support actually helps a young person move from learning to earning. To lead that conversation, we're now joined by my co-moderator, Farai Munjoma, CEO and founder, Shasha Network, and he's also a Mastercard Foundation Scholars alumnus. He's going to lead a conversation on what young people really think about learning to earning to leading.
Before we go into the conversation, would you mind sharing us a bit more about the work that you're involved in?
I run the Leone Resource Center, which is based in the Upper East region of Ghana. And basically what we do is that we provide digital inclusive for young people and then school children. So we have a resource center where teachers and students come in to learn about computers. How do they use computers? How do they use AI? And we have a mobile lab that moved to how to reach communities in the Upper East region to teach young people about computing and then also digital literacy as well.
At Innovate Africa Academy, we pride ourselves in passing on the gift of public speaking, being ranked the fourth most in-demand skill globally. It's one of those that young people must know in the workforce. Whether you are an accountant, an engineer, an entrepreneur, you're going to have to communicate for people to be able to invest into your ideas. And so that's what we do. We teach people how to speak.
I am a student, but I'm a student at an institution that truly prioritizes what policy making and governance will look like on the continent in the next how many years, as part of this mindset reset and mindset shift to truly create a new generation of African leaders that are trained and formed for African leaders. So my current focus is on education, particularly labor markets, aligning education systems and labor markets, but also generally just making sure young people have access or are active participants in the development of African countries all over, but particularly in Rwanda.
So there's a representation of multiple pathways of spectrum, continuing with your education, specifically in governance, which is actually quite innovative on the continent, and looking at communications, giving young people a voice and giving them the tools, and designing digital access for people on the margins. The question that I have for you specifically is, at what point in this journey did you start to feel like your skills could generally translate into opportunity?
So growing up in northern Ghana, I had never touched a computer. I mean, coming from a rural communities, our dreams are big, but access is very limited. And so when I got the golden opportunity to study at Ashesi under the Mastercard Foundation Scholarship, I got a computer, and that was the first time I've seen and touched a computer before. So going through Ashesi and completing Ashesi, I learned how to use a computer, I learned coding. So going back home, I realized that skill could be an opportunity, not just for me, but for my community. So that's why we started the Leone Resource Center, where we go to how to reach communities so young people can have access. So they don't face the challenges that I faced going to the university.
You tell a beautiful story about capabilities there, interest is there. As long as you put tools in the hands of young people, they'll be able to start coding, and your resilience to learn that is such a fantastic example of we need to put more tools in the hands of young people. What about you? You put young people in a place where they're able to communicate. At what point did you feel like your skills could start?
I think everyone has a story of a teacher that changed their lives. And for me, it was my primary school English teacher who said, Alma, you have the ability to sell snow in winter and sand in the desert because of how you speak. And in there, she introduced the idea of value to something that I thought was just a natural ability, because she said I could sell with this. And I started thinking about speaking as something that could be sold, which is something I hadn't imagined before. I think every skill that young Africans are blessed with, whether it is your ability to create clothing, food, makeup, artistry, whatever it is, can be monetized when the right value add and with the right branding.
Over to you. Tell us about your journey and earning. We know you're currently in the process of studying for your MPA. What is the aspiration after that? What's going through your mind? What were you doing prior to that?
So my journey has been I love to say that I'm a side quester. I love side questing. I am truly the resistance to this whole idea of curiosity killed the cat. Curiosity is gonna make you money.
Yeah.
I love conversations. I love talking to people, but I'm also a person who has very defined values and principles. And part of it is me being interested in decolonization and what that looks like on the continent. It is me being interested in Afrofeminist ideas. It is me being interested in all these ideas of redefining a continent that is full of opportunities for people, but that is also fair and that is equitable. And so we share one thing, me and Farai were ALU alumni, so my journey started, it didn't really start, but it blossomed in the ALU community. And then, I worked in communications because like my girl here, I do love a conversation. I do love the socials. I just love sharing conversations with people. And I think that's what also led me to the MPA, because I started looking at development as a question mark of how does development truly look like on a decolonized continent, and development needs to get out of these rooms that are full of economists and, let's say, very hardcore technical people, to people who are willing to understand young people and people who have very strong values too, because development is not just a conversation of how does a country make money. It is a conversation of how do people in a country prosper. And so that's where I got into the MPA, and that's where I started thinking about how do we align education systems with the labor market, and not only how do we align the education system, but how do we transform the education systems to reflect our values as people, to reflect our cultures, to reflect the knowledge systems that are so overlooked on the continent, indigenous knowledge systems.
Where do you feel institutions misunderstand the realities of young people that young people face?
For me, the problem is that institutions believe and think that because we are in a technological world, digital world, everybody have access to it. And that's a problem, because a person coming from a rural community have never seen it. And apart from that, they face a lot of problem having access to those computers. They don't have it. They don't have internet connectivity, basic electricity. People coming from hard-to-reach communities don't have access to this. Yet we expect them to come and compete in the same economy as someone who had been using computers all their life. So young people don't have access to those tools. And so it's a collective responsibility for us to make sure that if we want people to have dignified and fulfilling work, they have access to some of these tools that will help them build their skills so they can compete and become better people or better citizens and give back to their own community. Because if you don't build yourself, how do you give back to your own family or your community?
What you speak of, tennis, seems like something that is obvious. If you engage with the young people, you can see they don't have a laptop, they don't have electricity. Are these institutions disconnected? Why do you think something as clear as this does not translate into strategy?
It's based on where you come from, where you are located. Because, for instance, if you come to Ghana, in Accra, if young people, the same opportunities that they have, it's not the same as someone in Bogatanga in a Senoko community. The northern part of Ghana is less developed compared to the southern part. And it comes back to our leadership. we can go back as far as our leadership is concerned when it comes to developmental projects and all that. So yeah, I think a lot has to be done when it comes to digital inclusive, so young people can have access to some of these to become better people.
For me, it would have to be the difference between expectation and reality. And to that, I mean, I think institutions are expecting us to be appreciative of being brought in as benefactors, and we're telling them we want to be partners. They want us to say, thank you very much for giving capital, but we're saying we want to be in the room. Don't just give us the money and leave us alone. We actually want to be able to create a sustainable ecosystem, because what's happening right now is there is grant funding for young entrepreneurs. But what happens after that grant funding is these businesses are not sustainable because we're so afraid of failure. We had a conversation earlier on speaking about companies in Silicon Valley and how they are able to really apply themselves because they've got that cushion that even if you've got an investor who gives you $1 million and you fail, there's another investor who's willing to invest. And so it gives them that opportunity to think and to dream. Whereas with us, we've got a tunnel vision that says, once this grant funding finishes, that's it. It's over for me. I need to survive, or there's not going to be another way. And just as I close the statement, I mean, I registered for a PhD at 23 years old. And I did that solely because I wanted to be able to be taken seriously in these rooms. I wanted to say, listen, I've got the degree, I've got the papers, I want to sit on the table. And if young people are having to go to the extremes to seek exceptionalism just to be afforded that token position, we're doing something wrong.
We're saying no to gatekeeping.
Yes.
Never again.
Over to you.
Coming from this very apathy standpoint of, I know better than you should be grateful to be in the room. I think one of the things that I have seen from institutions that truly support young people to blossom is being able to understand them. What do they value? What are they interested in? What is their forte? What are they strong in? What are the opportunities that I could bring to this person that could make them truly blossom in whatever area they're in? And I see this even with people around me who are part of institutions I have interacted with, who have given me access to opportunities because they understand what my interests are. They understand where I am strong at. They come in as, I am interested in getting to know you, not because you are a charity case, as we said earlier in the summits, not because I am philanthropic and I want to be your savior, but because I truly see the value in who you are and I want you to succeed. So institutions get it wrong at approaching young people from a very, you're overlooked, you know? It's not a genuine interest in who these young people are, what differentiates them, what are their interests, how can we even support them to be stronger at what they do. If I am a policymaker and, you see me, I write a 100-page brief, you as an experienced professional, as an experienced institution, you should not come in to just critique and say, you don't know what you're doing, you just have the academic background. But this is how I can support you and enhance your skill because I see value in you. So truly it is about institutions just failing to see who young people are beyond case studies or ticking boxes of youth inclusion.
What about for the two of you, which systems made the biggest difference for you?
Access to education. That's one. Because without education, I wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to be supporting young people. So far, Lozele has supported over 15,000 young people, right? And we've been operating for the past 8 years, And also having access to funding, which is very key. Money is important. My business is registered as NGO. So in as much as the people that we train for the computer literacy, they pay, the amount is not enough to sustain my business. So people believing in me, as I was part of the MasterCard Foundation EdTech Fellow, I got 60,000 USD to invest in my business. That enabled me to get computers, tablets, a whole structure for a whole resource center for people to be in and learn and all that. So having access to education and also people believing in me and investing in me.
Money being put in your hands is impacting 15,000 people.
Yeah.
And this is infrastructure that's going to benefit so many more people into the future. And this is what we've been talking about. Give young people the money.
For me, I would have to say ditto. Look, the institution that is the MasterCard Foundation Scholarship Program that was the first investor, the first one to say that we believe you and we trust you. We spoke about trust earlier today and the currency of trust. And that, I mean, apart from boosting your pockets, it boosts your confidence in a way that you walk around with the credibility of such an institution backing you. And I wish that more organizations would recognize why it is so important to back a young person, why it's so important to say that I trust them, and in me trusting them, you should trust them too.
I'll wrap it up with two key takeaways. The first takeaway is listening is a consistent part of the journey, especially as we collaborate and work with young people, vice versa, from the institutions to the young people. And the second and most important one is trust. Without trust, we cannot achieve anything. But more importantly, with trust, we can sustain every other thing that we want to achieve as a community.
What's coming out of the conversation so far is that systems need to work better for young people in Africa, from the policy level to employers to the learning itself, financial inclusion. But the bigger question is, are the learning and training institutions meeting the realities of the work environment for young people?
In many ways, yes, because we have employers working with institutions like ours to be able to develop specific curriculum to meet the immediate needs. But beyond that, digital skills are evolving almost every day. And so you have to continuously curate those curriculum so that they meet market needs as they evolve.
What would a connected learning to earning ecosystem really look like?
It depends on who is valuing what you are given and the premium they are placing on it. It depends on the timing, the situation, and many things. But from what we know, it's a combination of theory, understanding the fundamentals of what you're teaching, but also having the experience, the skills to be able to do it. So it's of no use knowing what to do, how to do it, without knowing really how to do it properly yourself. In most institutions today, there's a lot of experiential learning. There's a lot of doing being integrated into the curriculum.
How can institutions of higher learning really and truly prepare young people for the work environment?
In Nigeria, for instance, by the time you are at a particular level in your learning journey, the third year specifically, then you have to go for a compulsory internship. And that helps you to have a taste, a foretaste of what work is all about.
Let's talk about the education system and how sometimes it doesn't really favor young people with disabilities. When we talk about empowering young people with the right skills, the right education, but then there are also young people who don't get this access to the same education everybody else gets.
It's because people don't understand. And people are afraid of what they don't understand. So imagine you've been raised all your life and you haven't had people with disabilities in your school, or the way you see them is you see them in the street randomly, you see them from a distance, you don't understand, like every market. How do you serve any market? You do marketing research, you understand their needs, you understand their capabilities. And that's the problem. People haven't seen that, haven't experienced that. And that's exactly what we're here to do. So the idea is we never put them on the front lines of how we design cities, how we design services. And why? It's because we never saw their value. And the problem is it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. People with disabilities themselves thought that they are not worth it. They don't understand their value and what they can bring to the table. But when you look at it, at an economy, for example, like Egypt, 20 million people, can you imagine the amount of money that you spend to take care of these people simply because you don't know how to make them functional in the society?
If you're able to design a program to equip learners or young people with disabilities with digital skills, what would you make sure it has?
First of all, you need to make it as a policy. So the idea is not to create separate programs, but that you have your team trained on what inclusion means. And you need a good partner, because why do we go to, we have a very nice saying in Arabic. It says, give the bread to the bread maker. So when you have a good partner with you, because my job is to make sure as a disability consultant that I'm on top of the, on top of the newest and the best and the innovation for disability. That's my core focus. So it's not just about looking for the right, if I would recommend to every educational institution, it's not just about doing what's right now, but having a system that ensures that whatever it's like innovation in inclusion, and make sure you're always up to date with the latest technologies, the latest tools, the best practices, and the failures. You need to become part of the ecosystem to see all the other educators and make sure you're not working in silos. Just as you do the same for non-disability students, you're always looking to be the best. You're always looking for what's new. So you need the good disability partners. And of course, when you have an inclusive team, what happens? You become part of the solution.
One of the other questions being asked here at the summit is what needs to shift across Africa so that digital skills are not just ending at the training level, but are also leading to fulfilling work.
One of them, of course, is stability. The country has to be stable. The second has to be a country which works for everyone, inclusion. And the last one is talent. So talent for me is very broad-based. It can be digital or non-digital. Digital is only a tool to talent. And I feel that the biggest divide we could be facing in the coming few years is unequal access to the digital tools. So our challenge now is to make sure that we have the infrastructure, the regulatory framework, which enables the maximum number of our people to access that particular tool. And we're running in bit behind the curve, but often we have also led the curve. So it's an opportunity at once, but something has to be done to ensure that the divide becomes as narrow as possible.
What would a truly effective pathway to dignified and sustainable income look like for young people? Because a lot of times, young people tend to be underestimated in a workspace. So what do we need to do to change how employment or the work environment views young people?
78% of the people are under 35. That is the picture across Africa as a whole. About 35% under 15. So there's no way they can be ignored. It's not simply about dignified work. It's about these are the people who will make our countries prosperous or not. And so I begin by how do you build talent? Okay, there are many ways you do it. But the quality of education we provide. And by this, I mean educational outcomes. I don't mean educational outputs. Outcomes is what are they learning is absolutely key. And because the numbers are large and our economies have very limited fiscal space, their income is digital. How do we combine the tools, the digital, okay, to ensure that as many as our young people can access can maximize on their capacity, on talents? I think the challenge you are having. But I think AI, which is coming to us faster than we thought, will be at once a challenge, but also an opportunity to provide our young people. We need to give them a chance to use the talent to innovate. So it's about training, equipping. It's about retaining. It's about empowering.
Employers are looking for talent, but they're also looking for work experience. Well, what are they seeing with the young people, and how can they be better prepared for the world of work?
Critical thinking, which is really problem solving. We see a problem, a solution for it. You do, you explain later. Critical thinking is a big gap that I see. And as someone who looks for talent, the most important one is the ability to problem solve. Because when you're able to listen to what people need, innovate to solve it alongside them, it really requires critical thinking. We're not taught that in class. no matter how many degrees you may get. It is really a muscle that you build every day. It would be great to see critical thinking have a big place in the classroom. I think it starts when we're young. If our children from nursery school can know how to put the button back on their shirt or clean the water that has poured on the floor, not call someone to do it. This this life skill is really critical, and our education system needs to produce that, but can only produce it when, in fact, instead of focusing a lot on the theory, that we do the practical learning to bring that critical thinking muscle, start building it from when children are young all the way into university. And I believe it's the most important thing that we need to produce for the labor market.
What's the one thing you think your sector needs to do differently to improve outcomes for young people?
Proximity, proximity, proximity. As they say, you can't design for us when you're not with us. And so what we are doing different from Better Than Cash Alliance is to go to the community where cash is king or exclusion persists. And we work to understand these challenges with the community and together find the solutions. We have the UN Principles for Responsible Digital Payments, and the lens is always, is it responsibly designed and delivered? And we've seen the shift from never having an account, never transacting digitally, to fully transacting digitally, accessing credit, accessing insurance in less than a year. And it has taken us being with tea farmers and tea pickers, working to understand their issues, bringing digital solutions that meet those needs, because trust is the currency of the digital economy. So that proximity of sitting with the community, ideate with them, design for them and with them, and stay with the community until the problem is solved. We can't just go do the research and go away and wait for the policymakers to do something with it. We have to truly study the problem, but instead of spending so many resources researching, let's be solving the problems, document the lessons, and then get the policy to be informed and reforms to be informed and be sustained through the education system, through the programs of government, business, and so forth. So only when we are close and sitting in the community from start to finish can we get things going. I think the development sector needs to stop sustaining problems and really be about bringing solutions as quickly as possible and ensuring that they're sustainable.
We asked the policymakers, what will it take to move young people from learning to earning at scale?
Sierra Leone, we have two ministries of education, one for basic and senior secondary and one for technical and higher education. So the secondary school report focuses on basic and senior secondary education. But I always say the Ministry of Technical and Higher Education, where I work, we build upon those gains, and we have to ensure that the investment made within digital learning at basic and senior secondary, you protect the investment and build upon that.
Yeah.
So we're gradually digitizing the education space in within technical and higher education. We're working with partners to ensure that young people acquire 21st century skills that would allow them to be able to contribute positively, but also be able to compete with their peers on the global scale. And that involves, for example, we're working with ILO, UNDP to develop an online skills training platform that would not only provide technical skills, but also soft skills, things like critical thinking, teamwork, entrepreneurship, critical thinking, and so on and so forth. And we will ensure that the platform is able to provide services for all. So we do not want to leave those who historically, because of the digital divide, might not be able to access learning materials online. So we're taking all of that into consideration in building this platform to ensure that it is inclusive.
I think there's a need for Africa to reimagine the infrastructure systems that we put in place in our countries and across the continent as well, especially as we talk about a single market. I think historically we all know that infrastructure determines how well a nation will do, say, in manufacturing, for instance. You can unpack that. It's the same for education. The quality and the level of infrastructure determines how much you can deliver. And you can find that in healthcare and all of that. But we're living at a time where digital systems are shaping competitiveness of sectors, not just individual organizations. And because of that, we are at a time where Africa is actually, we need to be a bit more careful, because if we say we're the continent with the largest population, the bulk of our people are young people, we must find ways to give them gainful employment. But also at the same time, we must find ways to actually give them the kind of jobs that they enjoy and they would like to undertake. And if that's the time where our sectors are now being less competitive compared to other sectors, to similar sectors from around the world.
What is the missing link between the education ecosystem? Because it's one thing for us to say, the learner journey from learning to earning should be a smooth one, but we all know that it's not linear. What do you think is the missing link here?
The missing link, I believe, is how the skills acquired transition into the labor market. And that is because often we train, but not in a demand-driven approach. We train for industry, but not with industry. And we need to change that narrative and train in a demand-driven approach, where we engage the industry partners and get them to tell us what are the skills they would like to see in a young person when they graduate, for them to be able to work and thrive within their spaces. So that ensures that the young people, when they graduate, they are in demand. And it goes beyond that. We also create this partnership with industry partners for them to now see themselves as valuable stakeholders in the way we train. We build equitable partnerships. We also bring them to the room when we're doing accreditation, when we're doing certification, competency-based learning, but also in some cases even help us to deliver the curriculum. But it should not be a one-off event. It's something that should be a partnership that should be long-term, a partnership that should be sustained, because the demand of the labor market evolves. It's not set in stone. So we need to create that strengthened partnership between the industry partners and the training institutions to ensure that when we do train, it's demand-driven, and then the young people will be able to transition into dignified work.
I think the shift in how intelligence systems are changing how we live, how we work, and even how we think in some cases is one that we need to be extremely careful about. It is not something we can stop. I think that paradigm shift is already happening, but also it's a significant shift in itself that is changing how we do things as well. So intelligence systems, you take, for instance, artificial intelligence, for instance, you can already see what this means for different sectors, for how we do business. For businesses that are unable to accelerate their ability to be able to use AI better, you can see how it's beginning to impact their competitiveness. I think moving from learning to earning, in my mind, requires practice, right? You can acquire skill set, but if you don't have the opportunity to practice whether you want to be an entrepreneur, we must provide the enabling environment for you to be able to put what you've learned to good use, allow you to be able to create your ideas, test the ideas, turn the ideas into businesses that can add value to society. There's a ton of systems and policies and infrastructure that must support us. So I think the theme is linking together, in my mind, at the end of the day, that needs to support your ability to build. And we've seen that our people can build.
If we revisited this conversation, say 5 years from today, what measurable change would you like to have seen by then?
Tangible outcomes, where it's not just about the number of people that we have trained, but the number of people that have transitioned into dignified work, or even those who have transitioned into starting their own businesses and starting their own social cooperatives, social enterprises. It also, in 5 years, I'd like to see that we're doing this through the lens of not leaving anyone behind. We're inclusive. We're mindful of some of the social norms that sometimes creates unintentional barriers to certain groups of people, for example, female students, students with special abilities. How do we ensure that we train through that inclusivity lens? How do we ensure that we're deliberate and intentional in training women to work and thrive in sectors that are historically dominated by men? And we have some examples of that in Sierra Leone. How do we also work with industry partners in that sustainable manner, but training in a way that speaks to what is needed at that point in time, but also looking ahead. What are the emerging sectors? We're all talking about ICT. We're all talking about the green economy, which to a large extent is an enabling foundation for industrialization, which leads to more jobs. How do we incorporate that in the way we train now in terms of green technology, in terms of ICT? How do we ensure that training is informed by the development agenda in country, but bring in the private sector and industry partners as well as the young people?
What an addition. So many lessons for us to learn. And one of the biggest lessons that is coming out of the Young Africa Works Summit is that the journey from learning to earning is not linear. It is a transition. Young people need quality learning. They need soft skills. They need exposure. They need employers who open doors and policies that make opportunities easier to reach. Digital skills matter, and they matter most when they translate into dignified and fulfilling work. My name is Joy Doreen Bira. Thank you all for watching this edition from Kigali, Rwanda, and a special thank you to my co-host or co-moderator, Farai Munjoma, who brought the youth conversation to life. A big thank you also to our panelists and speakers. Until the next conversation, thank you all for watching EdTech Mondays Africa.